Hey YouTube, just a couple of notes on the video that I have here. A couple of problems with it. We had some issues recording the plenary. So the plenary is only in speaker view. It's not in gallery view, which gallery view would show everyone speaking at once. Well, everyone's video at once, that is. And then the quality is very low, so that's quite unfortunate. And then the second breakout room of the two main ones got lost. So we recorded at the time and then got lost in the Zoom black hole. So that's unfortunate, but figured it would be better to put this out there and get that full cycle of recording and publishing done. For those who don't know, this is Saturday Dialogos. It's a weekly call we've been doing on Saturday, as the name implies, just practicing certain ideals in conversation. And yeah, that's what we do. We have a certain structure, which you'll see in a moment, where we kind of bounce back and forth between the plenary, which currently has about 10 or 12 people in it, but this is designed to support, let's say, 20 or 30 or maybe even up to 50. And then, so from that into the breakout rooms, which are typically much smaller, so 3 to 6 people, something like that. Yeah, anyway, hope you enjoy. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. So
that makes
jump right into the
a little bit less trustworthy, but
yeah,
the underlying trust and
yeah, recording it locally already proved its reliability last time, so we'll give this one a shot anyway.
Yeah.
So we can maybe start with questions now.
Yes, for authentic relating.
Oh yes, authentic relating first. Thanks, Gordon. Yeah, so we'll jump into some breakouts. In fact, maybe we should have started the recording after that, but okay. So breakout rooms of 2, of course. I don't have much of a prompt this time. Do you guys feel like we need a prompt for the authentic relating games? I mean, I guess I'm calling it a game, which implies rules, but
yeah, I like that.
Game. Anybody have a suggestion?
I like the one of just basically each person taking 5 minutes and potentially starting with the statement of, I would like to be listened to.
Oh yeah.
And then, saying what's on your mind with, and the two people can calibrate themselves how much reflective listening or feedback is appropriate for each person. I throw that out as a suggestion.
Cool. I like that. Okay. So we'll do we want to do then a 5-minute room where someone has to start by saying, I would like to be listened to, and we'll just let what happens.
10-minute room, so each person gets a shot at.
Okay, cool. All righty. So, okay, cool. I will now start the rooms, and I will send a message out at 5 minutes as well.
What if you don't want to be listened to?
Someone else gets 10 minutes.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I have to laugh at the mittens that showed up on somebody's profile a second ago.
The what?
The mittens that have been all over the internet.
Here, I'll show everybody here.
In case you haven't seen it.
Bernie.
I feel the burn. Totally.
So I think I've oh, I'm not the host right now. Oh, host.
It'll come back in a few minutes.
Well, I think I have to leave and come back, oddly enough. But I think I've discovered why the recordings failed last time. I'm getting this bug where after the breakout rooms, I don't come back. Anyway, let me not get into details, but I think I can avoid it going forward. But I do think we lost this last recording that we just took. So let me be right back.
Well, that's no loss. We didn't want to record that anyway, did we? It's this upcoming thing we want to record, so that's no loss.
Yeah.
No, I'm still not the leader. I think.
It took a couple minutes last time.
Say again?
I think it took a minute or two last time when we didn't do the thing where we all leave and come back. You ended up being the host. It took like 2 minutes or whatever.
Right. Okay, well, we can do the next section anyway without breakout room powers, and we can, and I can record that as well. So I'm gonna hit record. We'll do the questions game. Go ahead and maybe turn off your camera if you don't want to be recorded. I'll record in gallery view so everyone can be visible. Oh, I'm the host now. It did just come back. And it still says it's recording. So that's quite interesting. Okay, well, I'm just not going to touch it then. Cool. Well, we can begin questions then. We are quite a bit behind schedule, but we'll go ahead and do 5 minutes.
So what's the most important question that wants to emerge right now?
To what extent are we going to allow this additional presence of the recording to be the subject?
What is the role of courage, both in this conversation and in going forward in the world at large?
Is it fair to assume all others in a group should be practicing courage?
What is courage?
Is more
Is
courage
being-
always better?
How many definitions of courage are relevant?
Is sharing your truth with spirit in light of not enough information all we have at the moment?
Could you repeat?
I'm not sure I can remember it. It's just it's more is speaking your truth in the way and the capacity you can see that truth, and you do that with spirit, the way to interact, share, and hopefully jive on other people's inherent truth. Don't know if that came across well, but that's where it came from, spirit.
Nice.
Is being the most true version of ourselves, a version of courage, and can it help incline others to do the same?
And what value is there in risking rejection?
Where is the line between courage and recklessness or foolhardiness?
Where's the line between courage and naivete?
How do we think about collateral damage that comes along with acts of courage?
Do we know the best versions of ourselves?
Can we know them in advance? Or do we have to experiment to find out? What do the experiments look like?
Do the experiments all need courage? Or is courage a crucial ingredient to those experiments?
Mm-hmm. How much courage is enough?
When does courage become foolhardiness?
There feels like there is. Is there a link between courage and curiosity?
Do you guys?
Am I brave enough to change?
Do you guys know my best version?
Is our best version co-created?
Is there a version which is not co-created?
Yeah. Am I the same in all my interactions?
Right, is the version authentic?
What part of me is the same in all of my interactions?
Who says what is authentic?
Is it important to calm ourselves before going into a situation where we're going to be courageous.
Is our work more important than we are?
Can you get addicted to courage?
Can we be important without working?
Is there such a thing as too much courage?
What does courage look like?
Is everything authentic? Sorry.
Go on, Willem.
Is everything authentic?
Where are we cowards in our own lives?
What work can I do that's more important than me personally?
Maybe 2 more questions and then we'll move on.
Can courage be viewed as something the intender doesn't want it to be perceived as?
Is congruence the common thread between courage, authenticity, and value in our doings, be they work or otherwise?
All right. So we're at half an hour in. So I think we could just go right into maybe a 20, well, we'll just do a 30-minute breakout room. Sometimes we play around with the numbers. The default, I think, is like, well, there's 4 and 4 and 3. We could split in half as well if we want to be playful. Any ideas while I fiddle with the menu here? No ideas.
Kind of like half and half idea, larger group with more.
Cool.
I prefer a group of 5. Like 4 or 5 is good for me.
Okay, cool. All righty. Well, there's 11 here, so I'll join wherever
Yeah,
Gordon's
you've either
not.
got to get a 3
That'll
or a
teach
6.
them.
There's no escaping either a 3 or a 6, whichever. Yeah.
1 3 or 1 6.
Yeah. There's no way of escaping.
Yeah, and you know what? It's all better than not being here.
That's right. That's right. Okay, here we go. We'll see we'll see where we land. All right. Interesting. That did not give me a chance to say whether cloud recording or a local recording. So who knows what we'll end up with here.
One note from last week, a breakout last week, was someone said they actually appreciated when we had when we were doing like the Dialogos structure a bit more than we've been doing the last few times.
Right.
So that might be something to consider.
I'm in favor of that, and we can demonstrate it for the recording as well. Okay. Yeah. So whoever wants to speak first, and then I think the one rule that I like a lot is just to always take pains to, whenever a new person speaks, they reflect what was just spoken, which might be the most concise version I've said so far. But is there anything anyone wants to add to that? But first, reflect what I said.
Yeah, I would just add maybe we should have an order, right? So we know who's going to be doing the reflecting, and it's reflect and expand if we can, and then build on.
So yeah, you're saying that we should have an order, or yeah, so we know who's listening. I would I would actually challenge that. I don't know if we need an order necessarily. Just speaking from this moment, I'm comfortable not knowing who's my listener.
there's something playful or courageous maybe about participating in something where there's a given number of unknowns, like it's not overly structured, and it can allow for more emergence potentially, although as we've discussed at times, the constraints can actually generate creativity as well. But maybe we can explore the value of less structured, more playful dialogue.
Yeah, Josh, you're saying that it perhaps takes a bit of courage to engage with something like this, but then you're also curious about how it could be, which you're saying it's, engage with something that's more unstructured, but then you're saying that perhaps there's value in constraints. You can have even better conversations. So it kind of sounds like you're desiring a bit more structure in all of this.
Exploring a bit of the pros and cons, either less structure or more structure.
I see. I just know, as far as this group, there's something that it makes me feel sheepish about it. Like, I don't know how to characterize it. I don't know how to place it within the context of my life easily, because it seems to change a lot, and so I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's clear to me that I value it, whatever it is.
So Tim, that sounds like you, reflecting back on that, what you just said there, you're aware of the feeling of sheepishness about the whole affair, yet you have the courage to turn up. And there must be some sense, pointing to what Josh was saying about playfulness, there's some sort of playful fun about the whole dynamic that pulls you back in. That's kind of what I'm hearing from what you're saying, and it's hard to define it. It's hard to put a number on it or measure it. But it's definitely experiential, and that's what I'm picking up from what you're saying there, and I feel that too, by the way.
Yeah, you've got it, and because it's, at least maybe 5 years ago, it'd be hard for me to explain to my younger self of 5 years ago why meeting strangers online and chatting with them was the highlight of my Saturday morning, because I could be out still partying. I could be playing video games. I could be doing like these very high level entertainment sort of things, and yet this has a strong appeal, and there's a curious mismatch there.
Yeah, I hear you talk about the curious mismatch. I heard it in the first chunk there, and then more explicitly in the last chunk, and the sheepishness of, not really being able to put to words how it fits into your life, why it fits into your life, why it is in your life. And I experienced that too. When speaking of courage, when I talk about this group, it seems to always have to involve courage, although less as time goes on and I find better words to talk about it. But I also, depending on the audience, get quite a intrigued response. People kind of go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it does demand courage. And I wonder, it's almost like the visualization I have is the constraints that Josh was talking about puts us into a flow state, and we don't have much of a choice to slow down. And well, we do slow down in a sense, although we never, I think partially because of the constraints, we can't ever escape into scripts. And maybe that's part of what we're building here is a container that lets us continue to flow, collectively without, and every time we maybe slip into scripts or slip into debate mode or something, we learn from that and build the constraints around, we're engineering this machine here. And the machine has constraints, and I'm not sure if a machine has much emergence, but we certainly do.
There's a lot that's resonant in what everyone's been saying. Certainly the how and why does this group fit into things, and I think it relates somewhat to what came up in the one-on-one breakout I had with Willem earlier. There's a resonance in, there's something in common that all people have, as far as we're at where we're at, and we have like a North Star kind of, it's like, this is where I want to be, or how I want to be, like the truest version of myself, the most congruent. And it was interesting because Willem first said, I don't really want to be listened to. So I started talking and spoke about an experience I had this week where I kind of realized that in order to, I heard this bit of advice that, the thing to focus on is the being that we are, not the doings. The doings come out of the being. And I realized in a meditation thing this week that that's the being that I'm aiming to be more of, is just a little closer, leaning into and sparking more action, more doing in relation to the things that I find valuable. Because I know what those things are, but I've had a tendency to kind of lean back and like wait and see, like, instead of kind of leaning in and being like, yeah, I know that's valuable, I'm gonna do something related to that. And in just expressing that, he said, well, now I feel like I was listened to, because that's resonant with me. There's this common thing, in our shared humanity, that when we drop in and really communicate authentically, there's, even if we're the ones speaking, like there's a sense of being heard and seen in the other person. And so I think that's part of the draw of things like this, is we're participating and aiming for authenticity and aiming for a kind of truth, and supporting each other in that. And so it just, it's attractive, intrinsically attractive because of that.
What I'm hearing from you, Josh, is that it's difficult to define what this group means to us. It's kind of like a support network, but it's kind of also like a stage just to speak your mind. And that there's a challenge between being present and seeing an opportunity that comes up and having a way of dealing with that. For me, I know I think about things before I act upon them. And that's why I spoke with Eric about courage and the requirement for courage. Because I'm finding that the way that I think about things puts whatever opportunity is in a certain box. And that box means that I either engage or I don't engage. And for too much of my life, I feel like it's a do not engage. So the requirement for courage is to basically question what is an excuse. And that's what I feel is really important in my life right now.
Yeah, what I heard you say, Adam, was at least two key words came to mind. One was judgment, in terms of sort of classifying things and you know what you're thinking about, and that can lead to either engaging or not engaging. And then this sort of element of discernment around what is with that really fine line between actually it is appropriate to actually engage or actually not to, and is am I playing tricks on myself? Is it sort of a is it a mind game? Am I just not trying to just hold back or something? And it's a really I think that that subtle discernment is a really interesting place to explore, because it brings us right into the present moment, and there literally is no guidebook. There is no algorithm to help you make the right decision. You just have to feel into it intuitively and kind of have almost a leap of faith, you know, that this is truth for me right now, but it might not have been in the past, it might not be in the future, but right now this is it. Thank you. I'd like that you help me think about that.
That was lovely synopsis there, Magnus, of what Adam was sharing with us. I'd just like to interject with a
you want to first reflect what Magnus said?
Yeah, so with Magnus potentially reflecting back what Adam was saying, in a way, I'd just like to sort of basically build on that, which is this little vision that came into my head listening to Adam and listening to Magnus, which was, oh my goodness, is this a bit like that ancient wisdom that we all kind of had at our disposal when we had oral traditions? We didn't have books. We would sit around a campfire and we would talk our truth, and we would speak and others would listen, and there would be turns for everyone. And we would obviously make way for the great chief, whatever, to prevaricate over the said wisdom. You know, in effect, sort of almost like pass the proverbial peace pipe around. And in doing so, there was a fellowship that was being created, an authentic relating that we talk about now, and which then taps into that flow state that you were talking about earlier, Logan. And I think it also reflects the fact that we're looking for gems. We find them in things that occur in us, and also in others, and we get some sense making from it. Little shifts happen, little inspirational joys happen, and we are in this lovely mini sphere, which is a lovely release from the larger meta outside chaotic world sphere that we every now and again need to escape from. That's just my little stream of consciousness there for you.
Yeah, I'd love to reflect that. So you're sort of drawing a connection, quite a strong connection between what we're doing here, and authentic relating maybe more generally, and saying, you know, maybe this is at home in some sense with the, you know, sitting around a campfire, or a more tribal scene such as that. And I might be injecting some of my own ideas in there because I think that's right. And I've heard it also in other circles like this. John Vervaeke, the Dialogos 4, as I call them, they talked in their last of the 4 Dialogos videos, or at least the first 4. I don't know if they've done more. They talk about being around the campfire, and someone also in that circle mentioned exaptation, which is like adaptation, but it's you take a skill that was learned in one environment and you sort of apply it to a new thing. And so the idea is that our around the campfire collective wisdom has been exacted to maybe something like the Zoom calls, or of course we could also get together in person and probably practice it even more effectively. But it's more of a going on than I meant to do. But the campfire analogy does seem to keep coming back, talking around the campfire.
Yeah, that was a lovely reflection, Logan. Thank you. Yeah, agree with that.
I'd really like to see if we can combine the campfire analogy or concept and the intuitive internal looking for sort of truth or congruence, like, should I take action, and if I don't, is that an excuse? Or and I feel like it really reminds me, Logan, of I saw your conversation with Michael Smith recently about discipline, and there was a lot of that came up, sort of like listening to the body when making decisions, and using the whole being to determine what one should do. So that's one piece, and then there's the piece about sort of communal, communitas, campfire dialogue, where there's the internal looking for truth, and then there's the interpersonal aspect, which informs, right? Like we co-create each other as we interact.
Love it. So let me first reflect. So you're saying there's two things you want to connect or explore the relationship between. One is and maybe there's a few things. I'll just list the ones that I remember. The one is the campfire sort of communitas, collective intelligence type thing. Dialogos is another word I'll throw in there. And then there's the sort of more internal, I think I'm missing something from what you're saying. Something more internal about truth. Could you fill in what I'm missing there? I feel like I'm missing a concept.
Yeah, the way that how we figure out. So if there's an internal sort of true self, and the more that we can align with it, the more congruent we are with it. Then it taps into that question about, is whether or not I do something because of an excuse or because it's truly congruent. Like in some cases, it's congruent not to do something. In other cases, it's congruent to do that thing. And, just the wisdom of using the whole being, the body, mind, to determine what's congruent, what feels like, truly feels right. And so it's that thing about, like, do you really need discipline, or is discipline really more of a tapping into what's true and congruent, rather than kind of like flogging a horse within yourself to do certain things? Yeah, so that's the sort of individual, like, internal part. And I think that, there's definitely a connection with the communitas piece, because it's, like I said, we're not, no man is an island, right? That we're all kind of co-evolving, co-creating ourselves in each.
I'd love to jump on that if I could. Someone asked earlier something about who says who's authentic, and there was kind of maybe a couple of questions about, like, who defines what's authentic or what's true, and then co-creating came up a couple times. And so holding those, if I understand the two things that you're trying to hold together, one being sort of the communitas community, the other being a more personal body mind, like how do I tap into my body mind to do what's right? And then bringing that with the co-creation, it's almost like part of what we're doing here, or what we could be doing in this, or what we could be doing at a campfire is I'm trying to find my true self, and I'm co-creating that true self with other people. So I'm actually utilizing the collective intelligence hive mind, which has been so wonderful for us all to dip into every Saturday. But I'm now using that to shine the light of not just my consciousness on who I could be, but the consciousness of all of us on, well, the question probably wouldn't remain as specific as who I Logan can be, but it's you get a brighter light, a more powerful consciousness working on something related to how can I be a good person, or what's the truest version of me.
Yeah, Logan, that exact thought was like rummaging in my head, and you like expressed it so well. But yeah, you have this sort of group dynamic, but you also have this really strong sense of, you know, desire, sense of like realizing yourself, and you kind of recognize that the interference from the group helps that. It doesn't like diminish it, it helps it. And that's fascinating. You know,
Yeah.
throughout all of this, I've been kind of fascinated by the, you know, we have this, we're tapping into something ancient here. You know, groups of 6 men would probably often meet around campfires and have this kind of engagement. And but I'm really struck by the modernism of all of it, how we're doing this over, we each own like several $1,000s worth of equipment to do this. We're using maybe billions, if not trillions of dollars of infrastructure to have this conversation with viewpoints so incredibly diverse that it's shocking. Of course, also narrow in other senses, because we're all here on a Saturday. It speaks of a certain kind of person. And I just find that contrast really interesting there. We're tapping into something ancient using the most up-to-date technology, you know, magic essentially to all of us. We don't quite know how it works, but we can use it easily. And you know, where does that take us? Is it change the character of that communitas, or is it still very much the same thing, just so that we can't smell each other and then see body language quite as well?
Lovely.
Yes, so Tim, reflecting back on what you were saying there about, you know, we're using all this incredible technology, and yet we're doing things that would not be completely out of step with hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of years of humanity getting together and talking around a campfire and so on, and sharing in that. I just wonder if, because those people didn't have an awful lot of information, they didn't have a lot of science, they didn't have a lot of, if you like, certainty, that in a way, would maybe the push for us to be together today be in part maybe because we're a little bit sort of lost. We're looking to the stars. We haven't quite worked out where we are and where we're anchored, and also where we're you know, reaching to, if you will. And so we're trying to make sense in a much more I suppose strange world. We used to know so much. It would seem not that long ago, but now we're a little bit more confused. So by getting together, we're able to almost like, thankfully, I think, share in this wonderful connection, which kind of brings us back to that you know, oral tradition where we didn't have books to read. We just kind of talked it out until someone said, "Yeah, I actually agree with you." You know, and it's you know, it's just my take on what you're saying there.
Yeah, David, what I'm hearing you say is that perhaps there's some parallels, like between, I guess, the sort of ancient human beings and the lack of certainty, or at least understanding they had of the world, and our situation right now, with things changing so quickly, and just trying to make sense of things. And I feel sort of, I wonder because, you know, yeah, the ancient, well, I wonder if ancient man actually did feel uncertain. Like, I mean, I just literally, maybe they thought they knew, oh man, they just, you know, it's this God that makes this happen, and we got to, you know, give this sacrifice, and it's like, you know, simple ABC, right? We know our stuff, and there wasn't that much to know anyway, and maybe they had a lot more certainty than we do now. Which, yeah, I mean, if I mean that was the case, that I think there's just something deeply, there is something just deeply human about connecting and talking, because one of the things I notice in this group is this sort of myriad of sensations and experiencing myself in a new way, and having ideas in a new way, and just, yeah, just having experiences very, very new and different in the moment with you together. And that seems to come from this kind of relating work we're doing as a group.
What word? What was the word you used?
This kind of relating work.
Relating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well,
yeah. So Magnus, I think you're quite right. And don't really have anything to add. I think your theory is, you know, very good. I think it's right.
Cool. I'm going to kick us back into the plenary. Well, I'll trigger the destruction in any case. 1 minute remaining.
Destruction.
The break. The
room will self-destruct.
In 5 seconds. Down, 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 down.
The destruction of the shared consciousness of this room. You know, it's crazy when you think about it. This Zoom, because my experience when I'm on a Zoom call is not of me being in a room, it's of me being in this thing. And so it's an altered state of consciousness in a technical way. And then what's even weirder is it's a shared altered state of consciousness. You know?
Yeah.
Where was I for this 2 hours?
Exactly.
I mean, at one level I was in this room, but another level, it's not the most important answer. The more important answer would be like, oh, I had this experience.
It's very trippy.
Yeah.
Definitely very trippy. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cool. See you back.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, so I think we'll take a 5-minute break. Now, usually when I suggest the breaks, a few people stick around and talk. And I think for continuity's sake, I'm going to keep the recording going, but open it up for the break anyway. And then we'll just say in 5 minutes, we'll officially kick it up again. Gordon, I see you're the only one who stayed. And then I came back because it sounded fun just to, then it made it sound, well, I don't know. I don't know if I felt sorry for you or if it sounded fun to come back. I actually think it was both.
Oh, cool.
Maybe the worry kept me hooked on the screen. Like, is Gordon's going to be left alone? But then it sounded fun to come back. So.
I got my buddy Bernie here. That's okay.
Oh, okay. Who's Bernie?
I forgot to bring up during the questions. What's your favorite Bernie meme?
Oh, right. That's right. Bernie here. Yeah. I have a feeling he won't be talking much, though.
No,
he's like he's not in a talking mood, He's
got a reputation as a bit of a curmudgeon.
Oh, does he? Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom, I mean, I live in Vermont. We know Bernie, but we've had Bernie around for a while. My mom has been, active enough in education and other institutions, and so she was like, "There's no way I could vote for him. He's just too mean."
Oh man, well that picture does make him look like a curmudgeon, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of what's great about him, actually, in many ways, is as people have pointed out, he's been consistent for 50 years, in talking about the same things and working on the same things.
That people said similar things about Ron Paul. That was one of Ron Paul's sort of, his proponents would point that out.
I'm not surprised, and they seem maybe holding similar places I see a common pattern there.
Yeah, which is funny because politically they're so wild. Well, let me say economically, their economic stances are as polar opposite as you could possibly maybe get if the arena is American politics. Ron Paul is pretty much the most libertarian you can get. I'm not sure if Bernie is the most socialist you could get, but he's definitely more towards that corner in comparison.
Yeah. I think my sense of Bernie is his socialism is practically motivated. It's the socialism is clearly the means to the end. The principle for him is justice and treating people right, and ultimately ensuring that people are not exploited by the little guy is not just fed as grist into the millstones.
Right. Well, and generally, I go ahead. You finish.
I was going to say, I think that's probably consonant with Ron Paul's libertarian ideology of freedom for the individual.
Right.
I'm guessing at that, but without the problem I have with libertarianism is it seems to be divorced from the reality of the power games that do happen in the world, and the fact that if you don't have rules, the little people are going to get squished.
Right.
Yeah. Bernie is the most beloved politician in the United States.
Really? Like in history, you mean?
I don't know. There's a lot of people who flat out love our ex-president.
Yeah.
And have a lot of strong emotion.
Yeah, but it was a different kind of love for Trump. There was something connected to it that was wanting to see their agenda, played out. Whereas they just plain old love Bernie. He's just a lovable guy.
Are you waiting to say something, Logan?
Yes, I'm becoming mindful of what feels to me like a sinkhole of politics. So that's sort of how I feel about
politics.
Yeah, and the break is over, so I'll just say that, and then I'll end there for my turn. Although I guess the next thing is to go into the breakout rooms. That's the usual thing anyway, unless anyone has any other ideas. I think we'll just do that. And why don't we go back? Why don't we now do a smaller group? And let me just see. When I make the breakout rooms, they don't seem to be quite random. I think actually someone pointed this out to me. Okay, so I can do 3 per breakout, 3 or 4 per breakout. And we'll do, let's say, 25 minutes of that and then come back for 30 minutes plenary.
What is the next breakout? What do we do in the next breakout?
So yeah, typically there's less instruction for the second breakout. There was supposed to be more instruction for the first. I forgot to say so before we went in there. But the second breakout is, I suppose the idea is and I'm glad you asked, you sort of collect any of the themes so in your group, you will have people maybe from different breakouts. So you kind of collect the themes that showed up. And once everything important is on the table, then you just kind of try to synthesize, see what rhymes, see what the interesting connections are, I would say. And then the other sort of difference is that it's less structured. So in our breakout group, we sort of spontaneously remembered like, oh, the first breakout room is usually you take pains to reflect every time before you speak. So the second group, or the second breakout room rather, would be looser on that constraint. Try to bring the spirit of it in without having to think of it like a rule. Okay, so yeah, I think these groups are not quite shuffled, but I think that's okay. Rather than figure out how to shuffle them, I think I'm just gonna call it Zoom fate. And we're just gonna go with that from now on. The Zoom fate determines who gets put into one room. I think it's based on who comes back into the room at any given time from the breakout rooms or from the beginning of the call. Anyway, I'm gonna open rooms and jump into one of them myself. So yeah, freeform plenary at this point, as I think we all know.
So I just want to quickly say that coming out of that room that we were in, it seemed like you interpreted what I said, the group that was with me in that room, interpreted the idea that there's no scarcity and no lack to be equivalent to utopia. And I want to reject that. I just want to make sure that I have my 2 cents worth in there. I think that at the point when, you know, I mean, we've seen individuals with no lack in this world. So we know that it isn't a utopia, even if, you know, let's just pick a name, Bill Gates, you know, is he living in utopia? He has no lack, you know, that's not correct. So I just want to make sure that, you know, it was clear that if we were in a situation where we had a thing in the palm of our hand that was able to convert the sun into any amount of energy we needed to create, and all we need is the blueprint, or all we need is the form, or all we need is the raw materials, we'd still be evil. We'd still be at each other's throats. So we'd still be, you know, but we would just up the game to where physical resources is no longer the issue. Because why hoard something when you can create it in an instant? That you wouldn't hoard anymore. So the new thing would be imagination. Yeah.
I missed the last few words of what you said, Susan.
So the if you're no longer hoarding shit all the time, then you're free. You don't have to hoard anymore. That's no longer the game. The game isn't hoarding and having more than others. The game now is who is got the finest level of genius, who's got the imagination to take us to the next level of evolution. It has nothing to do with material shit anymore. That's irrelevant.
Well, we're not going to care who's got the biggest tits anymore. I can't imagine.
No, that'll still be there.
I see.
So
I see
yeah,
Tim
that's.
I see Tim with a direct response.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Susan. I really like that idea. It never occurred to me, but what happens when materialism is no longer such a dominant game? And I'm like completely, at that point, I'm like, are we human at that point? It feels so far from the kind of games, at least, that I see myself and other people playing, that I just wonder, that just seems transcendent of everything, you know. It completely, I don't even know what the new rules are. Imagination maybe, but you're in a very high space, and I appreciate being there for a second with you.
Bianca.
I think I've read about what Susan is speaking, and of course this is something I've just read. I don't know if I believe in it. But Tim, I have to say that the reason why we're going to have to use our imagination is because we have finished it all. And so we have to be very, very bright about how to get it back. And so I don't think when imagination is going to be needed is because we're going to be like up there. It's because we have reached bottom. And so I don't know. That's what I read.
I'd love to throw in there the idea that, you know, as Susan actually in our previous breakout room that led to what Susan just opened with, we sort of seem to be dancing back and forth between like some ideal future state, or more ideal at least, and then sort of the work to get there. And the courage comes in with the work to get there. And yet sometimes it felt like we were talking about both at once. And so what you just said, Bianca, I definitely have the sense that we're going to have to go through some hard times as part of the reconfiguration towards something that is closer to maybe the game that Susan is well, I guess Susan was talking about the games that we will no longer have to play of materialism. And I love, Susan, the use of the word games. I think that's exactly the right frame. I like how at once it points out how arbitrary it is, which is like giving a nice nod to postmodernism. You know, it's like, yes, it's all very arbitrary, but it also adds a playfulness into it. And you can talk about playing a better game, and games can be very meaningful. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, the thing that, and referencing back a little bit to Eric's joke about physical character, like there's these aspects of us humans, like, you know, our shadows, the development of traumas, and just all these things that are still going to be part of the part of how we show up, regardless of whether material needs are taken care of. And I think for me, it comes back to the way that we participate in sort of co-creating what manifests in the world. If we can figure out like the right sort of games or frames to, you know, containers for that, so we're, you know, coming back to the thing of like, as individuals, we look within ourselves and aim to be, you know, be and therefore do our true selves, and in co-participation with others around us, then we're kind of co-creating each other and participating in like what emerges and what manifests in the world. So if we get that right, then, you know, the shadows and the kind of like dark games that we can play would be interwoven, like mitigated and balanced in a way that like I said, it would need the right setup, but it seems like it should be possible to work towards something like that.
Eric?
Yeah, we had a really fascinating conversation, the three of us in the second room there. There's two things I want to say. Firstly, just following on, this follows really nicely on from what Josh was saying, you know, how to participate. The conversation culminated in the idea of, you know, the sort of the knightly notion of honor, right? You cultivate your honor so that you can be of service to those that need you. And that part of that is to be strong and independent and capable of causing great danger, causing great destruction, right? And yet you wield that power in service of, you know, those who cannot wield it for themselves, that kind of thing. And that cultivating your honor is a lifelong pursuit. And I think that sort of orientation, that kind of attitude in the individual, you know, this grand notion, because courage is a huge part of honor, right? The willingness to face challenges in order to cultivate your honor, right? It's a big part of it. The other thing I wanted to bring in was a question that Willem brought up in the first room that I was in, which I think is a super fascinating question, is in an enlightened society, whatever such a thing is, but just put that to one side for a second, in a truly enlightened society, is there any role for courage anymore? Is there any need for any courage anymore? Because the ability to challenge is woven right into the fabric itself, right? And so is there any need for courage? And if so, what form does it take? I think is a super interesting question.
Yeah, Willem.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a bridge because I think we tasted a little bit of courage in an enlightened atmosphere just now in our breakout group, in that we were with 4 guys, and it was really a joy to participate in this. It was a bit of a vulnerable, truthful, seeking, open. So courage, now in hindsight, courage also took another form than the usual definition of courage. And it was really nurturing to be in that space.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to consider, you know, the various views we might have of utopia, right? And the utopia of you know, technologically solving the problems of material wealth. You know, lack of material does material abundance equate to utopia? I would submit for human beings, absolutely not. Right. So you know, I've learned of one way of framing things is called the three lords of materialism, if I can remember this right, but called the lords of body, speech, and mind. The materialism of body and material goods, the materialism of ideas, you know, of speech, of communication, of positioning in society, and materialism of seeking some kind of uh, spiritual attainment for the sake of having an attainment as opposed to just because. And so on reflecting on that and realizing that you know, all of there's a lot of things that come out of it. One thing I want to say is just, you know, skepticism about anybody's version of utopia. My challenge to myself and to any of us is show me how I'm not living in utopia right now. I'm not experiencing it. I know lots of reasons why I'm not experiencing this as utopia, but I think that's because my own lens is clouded, not because the utopia is not present for me. And the reason why I think that, at least the logical reason why I think that, is because I can't think, and now I've just totally lost that thought. I can't quite picture it. Yeah, okay, great. Take it away, Adam.
All I just had was like, we envision that there's like a long journey to go on outside of us. What if that long journey is actually a journey to go on inside of us? Like, what if building the utopia actually requires going in and healing? Because how much healing do we do on a regular basis as part of our lives?
Protopia keeps coming up for me, and I'm not as sort of knowledgeable about it as I probably could be, but it's as I understand it, it's not. Whereas a utopia, I think there's a posited sort of value or end state goal, you know, like in so, you know, Soviet Russia, the workers or whatever, right? But it gets mangled and subverted and corrupted, whereas a protopia is like constantly evolving. And so just again, I think that thing of the feedback and the co-participation needs to be part of it. Like it won't ossify, or it can't, if it's set up to constantly evolve with the input and participation of all all within it. And that thing that Adam was saying about going inward, like there's a constant inward outward dynamic that happens. If we're doing it right, we're aiming to be our truest selves, and then co-participating with others that are doing the same, and then co-creating the society.
Yeah, the next game, I would say, and I could talk more, although Tim, did you still have something to say? I saw your hand at one point.
Yeah, it strays from where the conversation has been, but I was really fascinated by the idea of virtues being maybe consistent in the past. The virtues that I imagine Romans have about competence, courage, prudence, telling the truth, or having the capacity to make contact with the truth are similar today. But we talk about some kind of utopia, it seems to me that the virtues would then change, like not having the need for courage. If it's, you know, the society is so beautiful that taking a risk with some kind of idea, it wouldn't even make sense to us because it's just woven into the fabric of how we communicate. So you're not taking a risk socially that your reputation will be damaged for some kind of creative imagination. And I just remember thinking like, oh, wow, that was astounding, because it seems like the virtues have been very consistent, and they may change in a radical way in a future that we can maybe imagine ourselves even in, like within our lifetime.
Yeah, the idea of evolution is great. The image in my head, Josh, from what you're saying, is like games being born from other games. How do we play games so that we keep making new games, which removes, I think part of what you're saying is it removes the danger of so much ossification that someone has to go smash the game violently. Or if there's enough play, I think that's the word you use, if not punnily enough, if there's enough play in the game, give and take is maybe the word you used, flexibility, then it can just continually evolve. And then maybe one more thing to throw in there is that that's not just in the community, it's also in the person. So then there's that back and forth as well that was just being spoken about. David?
Yeah, great. I think the motivation really to have utopia really points to the fact that underlying it all, we have a sense that we want fair play. We want fair outcomes, not just for our own families and our communities, but also broader wise. We can look to history and say, you know, if our former enemy is happy and living well, maybe they won't attack us. You know, there's all sorts of pastoral wages thrown into the equation there. However, I do feel that utopia, much to very counterintuitively, I don't believe can ever be reached, and I don't think it's even worth going for it in the sense that it may be being pushed. So I also just want to say that, you know, if people want to deal in the commodity of ideas and share those ideas, I think those are the beautiful gifts, the material gifts that we, you know, as substitutes in a way, that we need to, you know, get more into. We will still need material things, but we've got to think in terms of how we make those with conservation in mind. But I think it's all about, I think the next stage in our evolution is about win-win games. So you have nations which have a fair crack of the whip, have fair ways of, you know, not losing out to other nations. And I think that's going to take a little bit of tweaking at almost like a little bit of a great reset level, but not quite in the way that, as been pointed before, that say Klaus Schwab would have it. I think we need to also think about what are genuine emergencies. So top of the list at the moment is, for me, is Uyghur women being, you know, traumatized in China. And I don't see a lot of that stuff in the news. And I think we need to get news that is responsible because it affects our behavior. And we need to have basically much more honest debates about these things. Just finishing off, I think there's always that temptation to rip up a utopia if we ever got it. So therefore we just need to try and live just that one step away from utopia for us to actually live together in harmony. There we go.
So I think now what we can do is, so there's two things we wanted to do at the end, the questions game and sort of like a minute long each. People can say what they want. I think let's switch those. So we'll do the sort of the statement opinion sort of speaking thing first, and then end on questions. On that, since we have 10 minutes left, I think we'll do 5 minutes each. And I don't know where my phone is, otherwise I would time it 30 seconds each. And I also think as far as ordering, why don't we do it I'll just facilitate it. And if you want to speak, raise your hand, and I'll just kind of mentally manage the speakers list, and I'll just call on people as we go, and then I'll end it at a certain time. So I might leave a few who've had their hands up at the very end who haven't spoken, but we'll probably get through and I'll prioritize people who haven't spoken as well. I'll try to do that. So let me just get a timer up. Somebody can begin. I'm just going to get a timer up.
And what is the prompt again?
Good question. I guess in my mind, it was the idea of sort of on the idea of summarizing or highlighting what you felt was most maybe alive in the chat. Maybe saying what you learned. I mean, it's a new thing. Those are sort of my ideas. And I'll say that's the end of my 30-second turn. So anyone can raise their hand or just start talking. And I'll just yell out time.
Well, I guess what I'd like to finish spitting out in terms of utopia is that we cannot have a utopia without immortality. That, you know, would be the ultimate thing that has to be overcome before you can really call it utopia. If there's death, there can't be utopia, in my opinion.
For me, the common thread, I think, is direct, like North Stars. So both on an individual level, how do we be our truest selves, aiming for the North Star for a utopia or the best version we can. There's like virtues, values, things that we're aiming for, but just that, not getting too religious or attached to specific kinds of structures or whatever. It's going for the North Star. Same thing with community.
Cool. Perfect timing. I'm just going to throw 10 up when there's 10 seconds left. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, just following on, really. I mean, this is just a personal example. I really like food. I really like eating, and I can be presented with a meal that I really, really enjoy, and yet I can still find fault with it, right? There's always something that could be done better, and I think, you know, it's that push towards always trying to get better, and I think that is what utopia is. That thing that we have inside us that drives us to always, what's not quite right, what could be better. That is what utopia is. That push in us.
Cool. Yeah, Gordon.
One thing that we haven't mentioned yet today in our discussions of utopia and comfort zones and things like that is I submit that the human organism, that a human being is anti-fragile and needs a certain amount of challenge in order to fully realize themselves.
Cool. Bianca.
I think this day was really great because it kind of brought my week to like a, you know, it did something to my week. It, like everything that I have been going through, it did something. It relates a lot, and it just makes me think that I have. At least I try to be thinking about utopia in my own life as a journey, and it's lovely. It's great, and I lived one this week, and I love the fact that I was aware of it, and so thank you for the conversation.
Cool. Yeah, Adam.
So just to add on from what Eric said, that there's something inside of us that is striving for higher or whatever. My thoughts on that and connecting with utopia are, we have all these different parts that are configured in certain ways. But when we don't have the resources and relationships configured in a certain way, we don't take that courageous action that builds that better structure, that there's better configurations. That's what I'm thinking.
Willem?
I feel inspired by this conversation, mostly by Susan's, or that sticks mostly as Susan's concept of the imagination as currency. And I can feel I'm usually not geared up for that. But I can now imagine easily that I can just fucking do that. So yeah, let's see what happens this week.
Cool. David?
So without the vision, the people perish, and we need courage to be the higher self. And we need to look after the weak because they can teach us nobility. And we also need to stimulate others to grow. And in doing all these things, we can bring about a divine will to fruition. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Well, we only have 3 minutes left, so let's jump right into questions.
Why is the first question always the hardest one?
What's going to be our record for the longest amount of silence before someone speaks the first question?
If everyone had precisely my level of moral ethics, would I live in a utopia?
Mm-hmm. If utopia requires no risks, do I even want to live in that utopia?
Mm-hmm.
Is utopia by definition a prison?
Oh.
Without risks, could life be meaningful without risk? Can we, as anti-fragile beings, be content, complete without challenge?
Are we more motivated by what we don't like rather than what we're striving for or don't want?
How will we ever know a utopia if it hit us?
We'd be dead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If we
broke the rules.
stepped in one, how would we know? How would we know a utopia if we stepped in it?
Is everyone? Go ahead.
Sorry, no. Won't nature always give us some humility over the concept of wanting utopia in the first place?
Is there,
will we ever feel good enough?
is there any gender in utopia? Are androgynous, or is there gender in utopia?
Is there any difference really? Oh, sorry, let me reframe. Is the desire to create a better world and the aversion to the things that we perceive as wrong in our world, is this just some high level abstraction of aversion to pain, seeking of pleasure?
All right, I'm gonna call it there. This has been very lovely. Really enjoyed this one. It was one of my favorites, and now I'm just wondering if that was the pressure from the recording as well. I wonder if that played a role. But rather than carry on, I think I'm just gonna say goodbye. I don't want to steal the mic. So, all right, cheers, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Cheers.
See you at the Glass Speed game at 1.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.